What's good, YouTube? Menace here, coming to you with like my own little twist on a tier list video, because I didn't want to come up and just be like, oh, these are the best decks in the format. First of all, I don't think I have like the reps enough to like confidently give you that answer. Plus, I'm like still testing some decks before I like start posting like deck profiles, as well as I felt like I had better idea of like, now that I saw the whole set, I felt like a first impression of like how the cards like feel to me would be more accurate to like what I could actually provide. With that said, I separated what I thought these cards fit into like 6 categories. There could be more, there could be less. Like I could have like, there's a lot of fluff, but there's a lot of fluff in card games regardless, right? Like in the amount of cards, like in the 68 cards, all 68 aren't like playable. So most of them will land unplayable. Some of them didn't even make my list because it's like the first 2 stages of superior. Like it's not really like necessary to like rank them because they don't do anything until they are superior, right? So my categories were game changing, good, better than their counterpart, playable, worse than their counterpart, and unplayable. What I mean by counterpart is like Execute is a great example. There was a genetic Apex version of him, and we're basically comparing them to that. Do we think he's better than it or worse than it? I think it's plays like it might land somewhere in the middle with playable, some of these examples, but I felt like a comparison to their counterpart really dictates whether it's playable or just not worth it, right? With that said, let's start off with the first one, which I guess we could kind of lump together, which is the Execute line. I do believe in my heart of heart that they're both worse than their counterpart. They are nearing playable though, because it's clearly a different strategy. But I feel like there's better ways. Like the best way to play this new Execute line would be with the superior line. But I feel like there's a lot better decks that do it, if that makes sense. Meanwhile, the Execute line from Step 1 or Genetic Apex kind of stands on its own and does its own thing, as well as still taking advantage of superior in the way that it could like, you could start like retreating and bouncing back and stuff. Basically, I do believe they're playable, but I just feel Genetic Apex Execute line is just a stronger card. Celebi, I want to put it in game changing so bad. I'm gonna put it in good. Reason it being, coin flips will always be just like luck of the draw. It's really hard to like dictate like, okay, yeah, this is like a really good card. Granted, when you set up superior with Celebi, now you really have a tank going. And honestly, it's like insane. I was doing a game earlier where that's probably the first deck I'll post, but yeah, like I had a game where I flipped I was flipping 8 coins with Celebi because of the doubling of superior. Granted, it's not like an ideal way. You don't want to have 4 energy on your Celebi, but it's just I was opening up slow. I really wasn't building up anything. And with that said, I do think superior is game changing. I might be overrating it. I might be overhyping it. I really like this card. What it makes you, where it makes like Venusaur more viable. It makes every grass deck more viable. Like it's like I can't understand. I guess it's I don't know if it's like the Yugi player in me, like, or maybe the DVS player in me. When I see ramp, when I see something like speeding up the process, like it's just insane. I know it's a little slower because it's a stage 3, but if you see this on curve, it's like it blows even Gardevoir out of the water in terms of like efficiency, in my opinion. Granted, Psychic did get it help in this set, but yeah. All right, for then I was about to say Shiinotic, I guess. I don't know. This is like past my time. At least like because I played a lot of the video game growing up. I did a lot of Nuzlocke and stuff also. This one for 2 energy, 50, and puts your opponent to sleep is like, I guess, a kind of a mix of like Wigglytuff EX with like the baby Wigglytuff. It doesn't help that the stage, like the basic version of this is just doing 20 damage. It doesn't really. There's just cards that do what this is doing way better. So I'm gonna go with unplayable, although like I see like the draw to it, right? With that said, I'm putting this unplayable solely because, again, that's the Domise or something like that. I'm really bad with names. I'm sorry, guys. Yeah, I think it's Domise. I don't know. Point is, thanks to the superior, this guy's even like playable, but that doesn't make him like a constant one-of in like any superior deck, in my opinion, which makes him in that case playable, right? I don't really think he's better. I wouldn't call it a good card by any means, but in the deck that it works, it's gonna be there. It's a 100 wall, you know, it does its thing. Which leads us, that's like the grass types that went over. For fire types, we got the Ponyta, the base Ponyta, which is just 10 damage for 1 energy, and flip it does 30 more. So personally, its upside is better than the base Ponyta, but I do believe consistency trumps like I want to say like it's also worse than their counterpart. Again, this one might be like conflicting because like their upside is way better than the genetic Apex versions, but I don't agree with like, or I don't believe in the coin flip, I guess. Although Marowak EX is one of my favorite decks to play, and it's not because I pulled like 15 Cubones, but just. But yeah, not to get too wordy with this. I don't feel like the upside for this Ponyta and Rapidash line make it where it's worth playing over the originals, mainly because this Rapidash needs 2 energy, which automatically, like, the point of the Rapidash in the original is the fact that for 1 energy it's poking and doing its thing. So that's just like my personal opinion, I guess. For then, with that said, right, we have the next one being Magmar, which I also just think it's definitely worse than their counterpart. Magmar as it is sees little play. The fact that you have to dump both the fire energies when you use them really lowers like his ceiling, I guess. And that's why Volcarona, I love the Pokemon itself. I'd have to put Volcarona in unplayable because like it lands underplayable for me. Like maybe it's like a tier above the Shiitake Mushroom guy. But it's like takes more setup than the Magmar. It's a stage 1. Like yeah, you gotta evolve onto it. And then once you use it once, it doesn't really do much. I do like the fact that you could scatter 8. Like we know Hitmonlee, how good Hitmonlee is, but it's 1 energy. Opposed to this needing 3, discarding 2. Not a big fan. Then we go to the Salandit and Salazzle line, which this is one where it has a counterpart. Which personally, looking back at the original, which is just 1 energy, just 20. This one's colorless, so you can mix it in with decks like Weezing, is where I would put it better than its counterpart. Although I do believe they like flipped up these guys. I personally would have put like the Salandit to poison and then Salazzle to be the one that gets an advantage for poisoning things. I don't know if that makes sense, but I actually think this Salazzle is worse than its counterpart. Granted, maybe the fact that it attacks with colorless, like, I mean, it doesn't even attack with colorless. What am I talking about? The other one has a fire and a colorless. Overall, this line is pretty unplayable, but like both the ones in Genetic Apex and this one currently. But I think the Salandit being able to hit with a colorless energy makes it where like you could have fun with it and put it in like a Weezing deck. Then we have the Magikarp, by the way. Magikarp, which is basically like the Abra from set 1, where for one, well, in this case, it's a blue, right? Abra's Psychic. You switch the Pokemon with one of your benched. So it's like if you lead with it, it's never like too much in danger, really. Unfortunately, it's also 30 HP, and this one doesn't deal damage. Basically, it's not, I don't think it's better or worse than the counterpart. I guess it's better in the sense that if you start with it, you could like get it the hell out of there. It's not the worst thing, like like going second. It's only playable because of Gyarados. And so I guess I'll put it better than the counterpart because it gets like you're never actually swinging with Magikarp. It's like auto dying, right? So the fact that this one could get out of the way makes it a little bit better. And I'm gonna go Gyarados being better than the counterpart. I want to say good because I just love the artwork of this card, and I probably will try to make a deck about it. But the fact that you go 4 energy, you need to go to 4 energy, and then randomly you might like lose one. It's gonna depend and live and die by the Misty, unfortunately. But it's better than, it's 100% better than the baby Gyarados, I guess, in this case. So then Vaporeon, I will have to put with good until I see more. Like, there's worlds where it's like, again, I feel like all the water cards live and die by Misty. In a world where like you set this up early and you Misty like 4 energy into into a Magikarp into Gyarados, then it starts like walling up, and when it's almost dying, you get to swap it back, and then like the ceiling is really high for this Vaporeon. But as far as like saying it's game changing, I kind of have to like reserve my judgment on that. Like I think I see the ceiling the consistent ceiling a little lower than game changing. For the next few, I feel pretty comfortable putting them all in unplayable. Yeah, their effects are like pretty nice and like niche, but the issue is I feel like they're all too heavy of a cost, and they don't really have like a counterpart to like compare to. Like for example, the Luminion does 50 damage to one of our bench Pokemon, so it's like a Hitmonlee. Does a little bit more, but it's a stage 1 and it takes an extra energy. Like I feel like it's too heavy. The Dreadnought is a coin flip after having 3 waters for just 70 damage plus against stage 1. The only one that's like just a basic Pokemon is the Cramorant, and then it's also just 3 energy for 60 damage on an 80 HP. Like it's just, I don't know. I just can't agree with like, I can't see those cards like doing too much. Again, I might still try Consecration and all that, but yeah. Pikachu, personally, again, yeah, to remain consistent, I think I have to put it in worse than the counterpart, because if the Ponyta and the Rapidash are worse for me, I think the Pikachu has to be worse than just guaranteeing 20 damage regardless. His main motivation is to evolve into Raichu and like surge it right for game, which leads me to the Raichu itself, which his attack is 3 lightning. This attack does 20 damage to each of your so it's like a Articuno EX that does 20 less damage to the active, but 20 more to 10 more to the bench on a stage 1. Like I feel like if you surge like in a Pikachu deck, I don't. It's just worse, man. It's just worse. I can't even like defend it. I like the idea. I like what it does, but I think the ceiling is pretty low on the spread. Maybe in the future though, if they release more cards that like spread out damage and stuff, and you can start mixing things in, it could get pretty good. The Electabuzz, by the way, he does for 2 lightning that does 40 damage to one of your opponents' Pokemon. So we go back to like the Luminion, but this one is a basic Pokemon, so it's a little more consistent, as well as you get to like surge, add the cards to it, right? But then the you have to compare it to the Genetic Apex one, which was a guaranteed 40 on the active, and then it could either, if you get flip a coin, get heads, 40 more damage. If tails, this also does 20 to itself. So like the ceiling's a lot higher while the floor is almost identical. So it's one of the few that I think although the original has coin flips, like the fact that this one's forced to hit the I kind of want to like despite I don't know if I would put it this better. I'm gonna leave it in playable because I think it's like in the like it's just as good or as bad as the other Electabuzz, if that makes sense. Galvantula, pretty sure that's how you pronounce that one. Galvantula, definitely. I would want to say, like, if you want to look at a counterpart, it would be like Arbok, which is clearly better in my opinion. It has more HP. They have the same weakness. It does more damage. It does 10 more damage, but it's weaker. And I guess like the upside is like the Joltik does more damage, but the Joltik's also weaker. I'd have to put it on playable because it's not like it could be 1-for-1 replaced with Arbok. So unlike the Dene, which is counterpart is the Pincurchin, but for 1 less energy, you sacrifice a bit of HP and damage to like get it online immediately. So it's really good in that it immediately slots into Pikachu as one of the basics that you use, whether it's a one of. And that's all I gotta say. Like that card is just a good card. It's better than I would put it up in good, but in terms of like counterpart and stuff for like the categories we have, Mew is unplayable. The Mew, by the way, is the same one that you got like an immersive rare or illustration rare. No, illustration rare is the physical. I'm forgetting like my rarities mixed up. The immersive rare that you get for collecting all 151 in the base set. It's the exact same card, and it's just as unplayable. It's a collector's card. Mew, game changing. The fact that its best attack is 3 colorless, and it's basically like a silver bullet that you could put into any deck. Granted, yeah, you can't poke for 20 unless you're playing Mewtwo or a Gengar deck or something. But it's just such a good card. It's so splashable into any deck. It's gonna see play in every deck, whether it's a 1 of whether it's a 2 of. It kind of replaces that wall. I know, although it's an EX, so it kind of like doesn't serve the same purpose as a wall. It can and it definitely outperforms any other wall. So personally, I think it's gonna be game changing. You've seen it in every deck. Superior, like it's better than Superior because Superior is like is only on grass, obviously, and this is just like a staple. It's like a staple as a card could get. That's not a trainer, right? At least that's the way I look at it. It's like early game, like when Farfetch was being played everywhere, just because it was like a early 40 damage, like that you just quickly push stuff in. Now, Sigilyph, I think it's Sigilyph. Sorry, I like the name really small. I couldn't read it. It's basically Meowth, but it's particular to Psychic. It is a bigger wall, of course. It's at 80 HP. So I'm gonna put it in playable the same way Galvantula is. Personally, it's worse just the way that Galvantula is, because it's like not generic. But in its deck, it will be better. Same thing with like Galvantula. Like you're not gonna put Galvantula in any deck the same way Arbok. Like you can't replace like the decks that Meowth is in, unless it's a Psychic deck. You can't just like 1-to-1 replace them. So I don't know. I'm talking a lot, like, but I think I make sense there. And then we got Behedgem. I'm sorry, I'm butchering. Feel free to write the phonetic way of like saying this name down in the comments so I can learn. But it is a stage 1, but for 1 Psychic, 10 damage plus 20 more for each on your opponent's bench. I think I'll go with playable. And what is kind of hard like to justify because there's so many strong Psychic types. But yeah, it's just it does what it does, right? It's like a little stronger than this Pikachu. It is a stage 1. It's close. It's nearing unplayable, but it doesn't really have a counterpart. It's playable. Like you can stick into a deck and do stuff. I just convinced myself that this card sucks. I'm pretty sure this one's Flabebe. Let me see. Yeah, Flabebe. I'm gonna go with worse than its counterpart. Its counterpart being Jinx, but not Jinx. I'm tripping. Jigglypuff. But unlike the ones that put like Galvantula and Sigilyph, the counterpart for Flabebe is a colorless card that you can fit into any deck. And whether you're playing the evolutions like Wigglytuff and stuff, it's just generically better. Like it does the same thing. I'm pretty sure it has more HP. Let me double check that. Yeah, it has more HP, and it's colorless, and it fits into any deck. So unfortunately, it's just worse. I didn't include the middle version because it just like heals 10 damage. It's just like a smaller version of the final form, which for 2 Psychic, it heals 20 damage from all your Pokemon. It's a 120 wall with 80. If it was, I kind of want to put it again. I want to put it in playable, but Psychics are so like the upside in Psychic is so high that it makes it really hard to like consider these any good. Like Jinx had like as a house, right, and dealing damage. This is not so much, but it's hard to say unplayable. So I'm gonna put it in playable because it just seems like it's too harsh to put it in unplayable, which is not what this Mankey. Oh wait, what Mankey wasn't supposed to be. This is unplayable. If you're wondering what it does, it's a stage 1 that for 2 does 60 damage, and that's it. Like again, this upside in Psychic is just so high that card's not playable. Without a doubt, worse than their counterparts. I don't know why they printed this Mankey line. I don't know. Like I can't even like. I'm not even, the same way I can't believe they made it. I'm not gonna give time to explaining it. Then there's Geodude, which I think is frankly just worse than its counterpart as well. The base set one has the same amount of HP and attacks with 1 energy, while this one needs 2 to start doing anything. And you can't Brock anything but the Golem. Like you can't Graveler can't be Brock. You can't Brock Geodude. You have to wait until it's a Golem. With that said, though, this Graveler is way better than the genetic Apex one. Again, just like Geodude, same HP, but this one has a higher curve. Like basically the other one, like if you mix the genetic Apex with the Graveler from this one, you're swinging for 20 turn 1, swinging for 40 turn 2, and then you have like Golem, which you could ramp to 3. You could go to 3 and Brock to 4, and you have the perfect curve starting from the beginning. That the past Graveler needed 3 energy to swing and was never doing that. So yeah, if you're gonna play Golem, you would play the base set, like the genetic Apex one, Geodude, and definitely you would upgrade your Graveler. With that said, this Golem personally, I want to say, is worse than the good thing about the genetic Apex one is that it has the additional like splashableness of like it just needs 1 fighting and 3 colorless that you could like resolve. Like you could splash into a deck that doesn't use fighting because the Brock comes with like, yeah, I don't know. You outsource that. Like you don't need to play a main, like you don't have to play dual energy to make Golem work in a different This one, however, needs 3 fighting, so it's just not the same. I want to put Aerodactyl in good. Again, this is one that read so much better when I first saw it, and then like the more I look at it, it's like, oh wait, you can only it doesn't stop evolving as a whole. It only stops evolving from the active, so it becomes more like niche. Like it doesn't really happen all the time. It's not as, but it will come up, and it still hits for 80 guaranteed. So it puts it above Marowak. It lets you play fossils, so it makes like your basic more consistency depending on how you play it. Also, if I'm not mistaken, it only requires 1 fighting, 1 colorless, so you could kind of get like you with like the playing it in like 2 color decks and stuff. Like it has a higher ceiling than most of the cards we've talked about right now, and in a certain formats, it might like be insane. With that said, Mars Shadow I also think is good. The Revenge, although it seems like who will play into it, it's kind of like if it's lingering in the bench, you have 100, like you have 100 waiting at all times. So it's just I feel like it's at least a one of in like any fighting deck, and you won't like it'll do its job. It'll do what it I don't know. I like it. Again, this is all like off the cuff. This is all like my impression reading it day one. There's a lot of these I still need to test, and like let's say if I were to do this tier list a month, 2 weeks into the set, a month into the set, a lot of things could change. A lot of things might not change. This I'll put it in playable. It's just a wall. It's like basically it's technically better than Onyx, but what makes it worse is that you can't ramp it with Brock. But it is 120. It is a basic Pokemon that could just stand there. You could argue and be like, oh, I'll just put Mew in that position. That's why Mew is game changing, and this is just playable, right? Let's say you're missing you just want a wall. It's like the 3 retreat cost does make it a little worse, so it starts nearing unplayable. But I'm gonna be nice. I'm gonna keep it there. Worse than their counterparts, 100%. Coughing and Wheezing from Genetic Apex are my favorite card to play, and this Coughing and Wheezing will never replace them. Nah, but to give an actual reasoning, Coughing, his ability of put a random Coughing, there will only be one other Coughing in the deck, because it's not like you could play multiple Coughings just because it's a different artwork or nothing. At least the other one applies pressure, does a quick 20 damage. Also, the retreat cost on this one is 2. I just realized that. It's borderline unplayable, but since I do have the worse than their counterpart, I have to like put it there. The Wheezing, like you could like kind of defend it a little bit more. You know, it's dealing 50 damage, but it does need 2 energy, which is like it makes the Koga play a lot less. Like there's just no way of defending this lineup. With that said, we go to the Purloin Lillipard. I'm gonna go with playable. It's basically now Darkness has their own Ponyta line. It's just a quick little attack for 1 energy, apply more pressure when you evolve. It's a little bit worse than Ponyta and Rapidash because of the lack of Blaine, and it's a little weaker in both like in HP, but it does the same role essentially. So I would put it at playable. Then we have like the Whirlipede line. It's Venipede, Whirlipede. This is another one where like the fact what hurts it the most is like that it's a stage, that it's a stage 2, that it requires like 3 phases. Because if it were just 2 phases, this is like a way better option than Grimer, right? With that said, I still think it's better than the Grimer line, so I will put it in. I'm gonna leave it at playable, because again, it's not 1-on-1 with Grimer because of the fact that there is you could Koga the Grimer line, but Grimer's like so hard to what's the word? I'm blanking out right now. To retreat, even though now we have Leaf and all that, but still. Yeah, I feel like it's playable because it's on like game by game is gonna be better than the Grammar line. Like I'm willing to try this line out alongside my Coughing on Arbok and see how that goes. Kind of messed up the order here. Let's go low key. I think this next guy's unplayable. The Drudagon. He does have rough skins, which makes him interesting, but fire water, like the only deck I've honestly seen use this is like the deck that Hooglin like posted in his channel of like the Flareon and Vaporeon deck. Maybe this could use it, but I mean it could be used in that deck, but the colors just don't seem to mix very well. I'm gonna put it in unplayable. I could be wrong. This is one of those ones that I might bite my tongue and like regret what I choosing it. Then these were quick. Pidgey better than the counterpart because it hits harder. Worse because it can't swing ever. This card's just good. Like the fact that you have Pokeflute in this format, it's really good in my opinion. the ceiling is there. I have to play more with it to like guarantee it could be game changing. Like the fact that it just hits so hard, and then you try not to. It punishes like Pikachu for having a bench. Like I don't know. There's definitely upside there. The fact that you could mix it with like the baby version, and you either have a house that like is swinging so hard, or a guy's constantly manipulating their bench, and then you have the flute as well. Like the Pidgeot line and Pidgeline, I'm excited to try that out as well. Tauros, I'll put it on. He's low key like unplayed. Like I'm gonna say he's worse than his counterpart. His counterpart being any wall, whether it's the Kangaskhan or like the baby Mewtwo or anything like that. I think this is just efficiently worse because it doesn't apply pressure early. It takes too much energy, and then if you're playing like a non-EX deck or a deck that has like non-EX threats, you're not doing anything with this guy. 40 for 3 is horrendous. Then we have the Eevee. Flip a coin. If you get until you get tails. This attack it's definitely better. I guess if you want to put it compared to Lickitung, it's definitely better than that because you do it for 1 energy and the ceiling is still the same. Like you just the ceiling's still the same, and it's just 1 energy, and then you go into whatever evolution you're going for. So it's like actually I would even put it at good because the Eevee beforehand was just like poking for like 20 damage, right? Yeah, I didn't notice how many different arts of Eevee there was, but yeah. There's not much to say about that. I just believe this Eevee's better. Shata, I'm gonna go with good. There's certain decks that you're just gonna like throw everything on your board or use a bunch of like 18 trainer for example. Granted, never mind. So that counteracts. But there's a lot of like combo decks and stuff that his ability to just refuel your hand or reset your hand is gonna be really good. Imagine like, especially going like what's like if you go second, your opponent turns like let's just I don't know. I feel like it's gonna be a good card. It's not gonna be playable always. It's not gonna be good always, but it's definitely better than the common card, right? Pokeflute I think is gonna be good. I'm gonna put it in good because the fact that and that's how like it's definitely meant to be played with like Pidgeot and stuff like that. But being able to Pokeflute and Sabrina and when they're playing. Because one of the outs to Sabrina was like not putting anything on the bench, right? And the fact that this just completely obliterates it. Is it going to be in every deck? Probably not. It does expand deck building, in my opinion, which is something this deck lacked. I mean, this game lacked early in just Genetic Apex, since there's a limited card pool. As we start adding cards, stuff like this is going to see more play. I also believe this is good. One of Mewtwo's problems, although Mewtwo's like the best deck, right? Like statistically, don't shoot the messenger. Statistically, it was already a good deck, but its one flaw was that, you know, if you don't see the Gardevoir line, you're in trouble. This, whether you play it at 1 or 2, it lets you more consistently see those cards. Or like, let's say, even if you play and whiff, it adds those cards closer to the top of your deck, if that makes sense, since it bottom decks. I think with Mew being so playable, this is going to be playable. Whether it's a one-of or whether you play like a... I think it'd be too... like... delusional to call it like a good card because I don't think it's gonna see too much play, but it's definitely playable. And same thing with blue is playable. I wouldn't know if like would you count Geo as its counterpart? I feel like Geo is better than blue, but I think it's also its own card. Like there's certain decks that will prefer blue over Geo. It's just not my playstyle. Most of the decks that I'll be playing would want to have Geo over blue. But yeah, it's definitely a playable card. It's by no means bad. And then I'll have to put Leaf in good to game changing. The only reason I don't put it in game changing because it won't be used in every deck, but it does make some decks that like top tier, I guess, if that makes sense. I guess it falls under the line of superior. You know, just to mix things up. I'm gonna put it in game changing because it brings viability to decks that couldn't be viable before, if that makes sense. So this ends up being that's every relevant card in the set, and by relevant I mean like I skipped over the fluff, right? Like the things that get to the stage 2s and stuff. Ultimately, like looking over it, there's not too much that I don't agree with. Feel free again to either agree or say like how bad my opinion is or how good it is, or do you agree or you don't agree, or what card am I underestimating, overestimating. Feel free to type that down in the comments. This is all a discussion anyways, right? It's just I want to hear what y'all think. This is what I guess it ended up being almost like a review of set 2. Mini set of Mystery Island. Hope y'all enjoyed. I'm looking forward to like actually like make decks and play test some of this, so I could also provide that as content. Anyways, subscribe and like if you did, if you liked it, and if you didn't, let me know, or not. It's all up to you guys. And just what matters the most is that y'all just stay put.